Hey y'all, welcome back to the Inner. Today I'm joined by my brother Anthony Nitcheu.
Hi
Hey
everyone,
Anthony, how you doing?
doing good and you?
I'm doing great. If you could introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone. My name is Anthony Nitcheu. Uh, what introducing myself? So I guess I can start with how my journey with God all started. First, I guess when I was a youth. First of all, I live in Canada, Sherbrooke. My journey started when I was, I guess, going to church with my parents. Just casually church going. I remember there was a time where I kind of have a kind of revelation, wondering, I wonder if I feel like there's something deeper to walking with God than just a whole Sunday church going. But eventually, I kind of let it go, and I kind of moved away from church a bit until I was in my about 13 years old. That's when I felt really God slowly and surely calling me back, and I started diving deep into searching for myself, answers about God, and if He's real or not. I always knew that God was there, but I didn't really know Him. There was no intimate relationship until there was one point where I kind of heard I heard the gospel, the message about Christ, and that's where it kind of clicked. And I decided to go all in with a relationship with Christ. That was back in I think 2013, and it maybe lasted about 3 or so years. I didn't really join a church or community, kind of on my own. But eventually, there was kind of some tensions with my family, especially my father, because he was kind of a, you know, hard religious upbringing, really, that really put him against religion. So I kind of had to endure a form of persecution on that side, which led me to kind of put my relationship with God on the side for maybe until I was from 16 until I was 22. And it's when I was 22 years old in 2019 that I really picked up my relationship with God again. And this time I went full in. And this time at that point, I joined a community, a church, more Pentecostal like. And so I started witnessing words of prophecy, healings, and I started really experiencing the miraculous. But at that point, actually, the first month when I decided to walk with God again, I kind of have my first experience of hearing the voice of God personally. And I heard the voice of the Father, and it was really a big experience for me because I was like, okay, that was kind of outside of my framework. So, and the thing that he told me is he was kind of um, speaking to me about my identity, not only in Christ, but my identity as Christ in a sense. Because what he told me was, you are the King of Israel. And at the time, my spirit knew that was true, but my soul didn't really understand. And it was only later when I saw in the scripture, in the book of John, where I think it was Nathaniel, one of the disciples, that told us the same thing about Jesus. So basically, the Father was kind of telling me that I'm kind of the same thing that He is, understanding this reality of as He is, so are we in this world. And right after that, I actually had it. Right after the Father spoke, I had a kind of this encounter with the spirit of Antichrist because I was kind of just laying on my bed at that time, and then I could feel this presence, like a spirit that was just hovering over me, and like my spirit picked up spirit of Antichrist, and at first I was like, what is this all about? And but it was only throughout the years that I've kind of gotten a deeper and deeper revelation of what that was about, because at that point I was understanding. Now I understand that God was not only speaking to me about identity, but it was telling me how, the Christian framework that I grew up in had put me under a spirit of Antichrist, where I didn't get to understand that reality. So from 2019 until today, 2024, it was really a time of deconstruction and reconstruction, where God deconstructed the Christian faith. And then I got this transition where I went from Christianity to stepping into sonship, into the kingdom. And then the more I seeked out the kingdom, the more I could tell this difference between Christianity and the kingdom. And it was, I guess, just this past June that I kind of completely left the system, left the church, left Christianity, and decided to go full into my journey into sonship. And that's a moment God gave me a clear instruction to leave church, and so I did. And now I guess I'm presently on this path of, you know, starting my own ministry, building the revelation that I've got throughout these 5 years. You know, I feel like there's a building the new while I see kind of the old kind of crumbling away. Whether it's on the subject of consciousness, frequencies, quantum realities, manifestation, that is all things that the Lord has slowly but surely guided me through and give me download after download. So pretty much that's where I am right now.
That's amazing. If you could talk a bit about your ministry, I believe it's above, not below.
Mm-hmm. From above, not below. So that's the ministry that I started. I guess this June, not too long ago, and I also have started YouTube channel. Basically, I teach about some foundational kingdom principles like consciousness, frequency, and I also talk about what else. There's aspects where eventually I get into more deconstruction, in the sense of some Christian doctrines that I've had to deconstruct throughout the years, like the concept of hell, to understanding what the Bible is, scripture, and the difference between that and the Word of God. And there's also, I guess, an aspect eventually where I want to speak on the topic of, sonship. Well, I'm speaking on sonship, on really this concept of divinization of humanity, basically the whole point of Yeshua's message, this idea that we are divine, ye are gods, that we're supposed to step into that fullness of the stature of Christ. But there's also an aspect eventually of wealth, because I feel there's a calling of wealth on my life, and helping people step into their purpose and their wealth, and really start becoming also not only consumers but creators too, starting their own businesses, maybe writing their own books, creating their own art. So eventually, so I'm kind of slowly but surely building this community where I want people who are interested in the kingdom, but also maybe business in that sense, to come together to kind of learn how to build, how do we function from the kingdom and on that aspect, and how do we start really building from there.
Okay, I like that. So you mentioned Sunship a few times. So for the people watching this who might not have gotten it yet, could you kind of break down the concept of how Sunship really differentiates from the usual religious experience?
Mm-hmm. Well, first I'd say that, in the usual Christianity, you can have like there's always this concept of distance, from God, of necessarily you can go through it without actually having this inner experience of God. But in Sonship, I realized that there's a need for this not only personal relationship, but really experiencing God, letting Him be the one who gives us our direction for life, getting knowings, dreams, revelations, or visions, any way that He leads us, and understanding that there's a point where you need to you can function under the man of God syndrome, where there's always the past who kind of dictates what it is you need to believe, what you need to do, and stuff like that. So it's really this place where basically the same relationship that Christ had with the Father is the same relationship that we are supposed to have with the Father. And basically we're supposed to become just complete copies of what Yeshua did, we're supposed to do in this world. So it's really learning how to tap into that deeper essence of relationship. It's learning, kind of this truly going deep into knowing who we are as a person, our strength, weaknesses, and allowing God to kind of use. I realize that you can, instead of it's not just going to church, spending your whole time. You can know God in a distance, in with a lot of head knowledge, but then Sonship is really more experiential, where it's really life teaching you, and you go through your encounters, and God tells you to do something that you feel you're not ready to do, but just you're forced to kind of lean into your fears, leaning into the parts of yourself that you maybe don't want to see, and it forces you kind of this going through the fire, basically. So yeah, and what else? I guess. Well, I just did a video recently about the topic of ascension, engaging heavenly realms, which is, something that I've been realizing more and more is important relationship that you need to build, well, like with the cloud of witnesses, the seven spirits of God. And basically, in Christianity, you can go throughout your life not knowing about these relationships. And it's like Christianity is more earthbound, but really, when it's the kingdom, you need to be aligned with what the kingdom is doing today, and it's learning how to flow with the spirit.
Yeah, I like that. It's like in the basis of religion, the structure is mostly built around you working and you serving. Everything else comes after that. Are you healthy? It doesn't matter. Can you still help set up chairs? It's like, you're having encounters. So what? Can you lead Bible study? But no, just read from our pamphlet. None of this new stuff you're talking about hearing
Yeah.
God from. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, the end results of religions, especially Christianity, is actually our starting place. They do all these things to get to heaven. Well, shoot, you start there. The sonship journey doesn't really start until you access those heavenly places and tap into those relationships you were talking about. I recently put something on Facebook where I was saying that that's one of the priorities, is that you realize that there's certain areas of our destiny that we'll never access if we don't interact with the beings we're meant to be in partnership with. That whether it be the seven spirits, some angels, there's beings that don't classify as angels that hold keys to our destiny. So I just wanted to somewhat piggyback on what you were saying. I agree wholeheartedly. So around when did you really get exposed to the idea of heaven being something that can be interacted with now rather than later?
I guess it was around 2021 when I started just I came across some video about Mike Parsons, and that's when at first I was like kind of skeptic. That's kind of out of my bulk. What are they talking about, But eventually I just kept listening and listening, and eventually I kind of understood that there was a whole other realm that was accessible, and that was like really this idea, like you said, it's foundational. And it's also kind of why my ministry is called From Above, Not Below. Like we start from heaven down, not trying to go to heaven after we die, but in a sense, we've already died with Christ and we're seated in the heavenly places. So yeah, that's when I started becoming aware of that. Yeah.
Okay. So so about how long have you been like personally interacting with the heavens?
With the heavens, I guess personally, it's been more around, I'd say, 2023 that I started really getting this habit of mostly engaging. Right now, it's mostly by faith. I get sometimes clear impression, images, kind of on the screen from my imagination and stuff. I haven't yet had a full blown experience, but even with that, I've noticed I've gotten more clear directions. And in 2023, I actually just finished writing a book, and it was kind of giving me I knew that was like a kingdom mandate that God was giving me on this moment. So that's also something that kind of eventually led to me having to leave my church. But yeah, so that's when I started really starting noticing that, the timeline of the kingdom is really kind of its own thing. It's different than what I was doing as a youth pastor when I was in Christianity. So yeah.
Okay. So I want to hear a little bit about the seven spirits. Kind of break that down for us. Who are the seven spirits? What's their purpose? And also, how do you actually interact with them yourself?
So yeah, basically, the the seven spirits. They're the spirits. They are mentioned. I think it's in Isaiah: spirit of understanding, spirit of the Lord, spirit of counsel, spirit of the fear of the Lord, spirit of understanding, and did I miss one? Wisdom.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's all of them. So yeah, those seven spirits are kind of like, in a sense, mentors. They're supposed to teach us. They're like class teachers in a sense, supposed to grow us into our sonship and how to function into really the fullness, into the anointing. Basically, well, Yeshua kind of was somebody that exemplifies somebody that kind of had gone through all those seven classes himself, and you see him function into all those aspects, because the seven spirits, they have, yeah, their own gift, their own anointing that they can give us. And my personal way to interact with them is, I just, yeah, just take some time, the same way I interact with the Holy Spirit of the Father or Yeshua. I just have my little notebook where I just spend time in silence, and then I go within, and then I just engage heaven by faith, and then whatever it is that I receive. Sometimes it's instruction. Sometimes it's funny, because there have been time where I've had the spirit of knowledge tell me to start my morning, like fix my morning routine to with a starting with a banana milkshake, and I find it funny because that's something that my uh, I think it's my roommate one day had a kind of giving me, telling me, oh, you know what, you should try to doing this, starting your routine with the same thing, about that milkshake. And I find it funny because it's like God was using, already speaking through other people, but when I started encountering the seven spirits, I was kind of getting these clear instructions. Sometimes it's just some messages that they want me to give to other people. So yeah, and it's my way of knowing when I get a clear direction. They often give me the image of a controller, like a video game controller. That's when I know that, okay, I have something that I'm supposed to do. So kind of like homework. And the first time that I'd started practicing, just encountering them, they kind of felt like class teachers. They were presenting themselves, what their class was going to be about, and then some of them even gave me homework on the first day of school, already telling me, okay, there was a time, I think the spirit of was understanding, telling me to read what was it, Seven Tablets of Thoth and the Hermetica. So already two scriptures that are outside of the 66 canon. So yeah, that's kind of my way of interacting with them. I'm still kind of feeling like I'm still getting started, but yeah, it's really interesting because I'm getting really clear direction when I do it.
That's amazing. I like that you mentioned the Emerald Tablets and the Hermetica. Those are some of my favorite books. I think I've listened to, well, no, I was going to say I think I've listened to the Hermetica more than any other book, but the Tao Te Ching takes it.
Mhm.
Um, talk about how beneficial, what are some of the things that really stuck out to you while going through those different texts?
Yeah, something that stuck out. I'd say the Hermetic principle, the concept of resonance, and what else? Oh, I keep forgetting. Well, it's basically a lot of the things that have kind of been confirmation that I've been learning when diving into quantum physics and stuff like that. How our reality function really from the immaterial first, the importance of energy. I guess something that stuck out there was also the prophecy of Thoth at the end, which he kind of prophesied our time where we become more materialistic, and then even uh, talking about the sons of light eventually, that there'll be the shift, but there's also going to be the spirit of a kind of a lot of chaos. So that's something that stuck out. And yeah, there was also a bit about kind of astrology, how today we were born, and the position of the moon, the sun, and the stars. They kind of influence kind of the makeup of our soul, in a sense, our personality. So that was kind of okay. So I was starting to see that there was a truth to the whole thing about astrology and all of that. So guess it started kind of diving into this different component humanity, basically.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the Hermetica is when it talks about they call them the gods
Mm,
in that same celestial format, and it's talking about Ra, or the sun, being the giver of life, that light comes from him and draws life unto himself, where it's this
mm,
constant reaping and sowing of life. And I've always found that fascinating. Like, I would oftentimes rewind back just to re-listen to that part over and over again, because I mean, you know me long enough. We met more recently. I think, what was it, this year or last year?
think I don't think we have met face to face yet, but since
Yeah,
then, maybe it's last year.
probably last year. Where it's like, uh I've been teaching about life, light, and truth, and being radiators of that. So to find a text written long before I was on the planet that's talking about releasing and receiving and becoming this uh, living impartation of life was fascinating.
Mm,
Even with the Emerald tablets, one of the parts that I feel gets overlooked is Tablet 5, where it talks about the dweller of Unal. Where it
mm,
talks about this guy named Horlet who was able to create temples using his mind, just being able to
mm,
create out of energy
mm.
because his consciousness was that sound. I'm like, wow, everyone's focusing on the seven lords in, I think it's like Tablet 7, where it's breaking down the different names of the ones that govern over the planets in the astral plane that indirectly feed us energy.
Mm.
I'm like, that's fantastic. But did you hear about a guy that made a temple with his mind? That's it. He
Hmm.
just pulled the light around him into form, and that's what he. And then understanding temples, well, it didn't look like our little bitty nonsenses that we have. Like, I live in the Bible Belt of the U.S., so we have churches everywhere. No, if they're talking temples, it fits closer to the way the Hindu temples look, where they're like almost city sized.
Mm.
It's like he pretty much just said he created Disney World with his mind.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I
So
have to
that's some of
reread
the,
it.
yeah, that's one of the parts that I'll listen to Tablet 5 on repeat because
Mm,
I found a guy named Gerald Clark. Sadly, he passed away a few years ago because I would have loved to have him on here. But he did his own translation or somewhat commentary of the Emerald Tablets. Um, and he includes the different names of some of the like the Anunnaki
mm,
as he goes through the text, and it just gives it a different take.
mm,
I find that one a lot more powerful as far as like subconscious rewiring.
mm.
I'm like, it might freak out people who are maybe still in Christianity or deep in their religion. It'll freak them out because of the names he'll use, but I divorced it years ago.
Yeah.
So, and I've done the same studies, and I'm like, he's right. I agree with him on most of the comparisons he makes. Um, so continuing on the topic, we were just talking about the seven spirits. Talk about your relationship with the cloud of witnesses, your governors. Have
Hmm.
you been able to build a relationship with them? Are you familiar with who some of them are? Talk about that for a bit.
Okay. Yeah. I've started. Honestly, I kind of put it a bit on the side recently, but I did start getting familiar with, for example, a little bit with Moses. I know there was a time where with Moses, he was kind of, it was more on the faces of God. The faces of God I was talking to him about, and understanding that I needed to start functioning from some different faces. You know, there's a lion, ox, eagle, and human. I guess on my side, understanding that I mostly may be a human and a ox myself. So just getting more into the eagle and the lion, just understanding this dominion aspect. And at the same time, it's interesting because this aspect of dominion, and but also I feel building community can have to do with the kind of fit together in a sense, you know, creating this area, this community, this place. So that was something that as I was starting to start building on my own channel, my own Discord, my own Patreon, just understanding, okay, I have to push towards this more community based in a sense. So that was something that was interesting. I want to talk cloud of witnesses. Who else? Right now, there's I think there's Saint German too, which was funny because even before, I think you did a post once on Patreon about talking about Saint German being part of the cloud of witnesses. But even before then, I had moments of downloads or little coincidences that led me to understand that he was kind of an important character, and I always had kind of this interest about him. So that's somebody that I want to kind of dive in more into, especially on the topic. I feel like relationships is something that he wants to talk to me about. So that's something that I plan on doing in the future, diving more into that. So beside that, I guess that's the two biggest relationships right now. So yeah.
Yeah. Saint Germain is someone I've been somewhat interested in, never enough to actually try to meet with him or anything.
Mm.
Just that he stood out in the past, just because of how different he is when studying all the other weirdos I study on a regular
Mm.
basis. Where this is the first person who's kind of like a documented time traveler
Mm.
that can't really be scrubbed from the history books.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, no, same guy. Yep, same guy. All these credible people that we already reference in pop culture knew him, and they were hundreds of years apart, and
Mm.
they described him the exact same way, doing the same thing. Yeah, this guy's pretty interesting. I
Mm.
want to say the last appearance of him was in the 1900s somewhere.
Mm. Yeah, no, he's kind of a funny oddball in a sense.
Yeah,
Well,
but
it kind of reminds me. I feel there was one time I heard the father tell me about he wanted to give me he said mastery over time and space. So this whole aspect of time and space, maybe even time travel, those are things that are kind of interesting to me. So yeah, I'll have to ask him about that.
yeah, because there's a lot of areas of the supernatural that the kingdom, or more so the empire, is trying to make a lot more common, that more so we're not ready for ourselves yet.
Mm.
Where it's like they've been trying to give the keys of time travel away for decades,
Mm.
and more so the fear of if the wrong person gets a hold of it keeps us from really engaging it.
Mm.
Same with teleportation. Like, I've been prophesying for maybe 4 years, just saying that in once this 30-year forerunner period is over, I'm looking forward to us having new problems
Mm.
that we've got to get over the isms we've already been dealing with for the past however long. We need new issues. How about we have people so powerful supernaturally, we have to create laws. Okay, look, traveling into other people's houses unpermitted, that's trespassing. New problems.
Mm.
Not saying that problems need to disappear. I'm just getting tired of the same ones. It's
Yeah.
like, really, we're walking through walls and still questioning if women should teach or not. I feel like that should expire.
Yeah. Mm.
But yeah, you and a few others in the community have been talking about engaging time. I've
Mm.
had my fair share of time related experiences. One of my students that been around me since the beginning, when me and him would travel together, oftentimes we would translate in the middle of driving, where doing the speed limit there, or more so speeding to our destination, would take
Mm.
us an hour.
Mm.
Driving back, doing the speed limit would take us 20 minutes. So it would
Wow.
shave off like 40 minutes every time we went. And we saw this almost every week.
Mm.
There's been moments where, I mean, I've told y'all part of my story is how often and how long I would pray when I was starting out. There was moments where I'd go in to pray and I'd come out and the time would be 2 minutes before I went in,
Mm.
after I'd been in there for a few hours, because I have a playlist going. And, at this time I'm still listening to contemporary, like regular gospel music. So I'm like, I've heard that Kirk Franklin song twice. That playlist has cycled through already, and I come out and it's 2 minutes before I went in. I'm like, well, I went in to pray at 10. It's 9:58. Something's up. So I've had personal experience of it. It's just never been a big desire for me. The thing about it is, I'd say I'm more fascinated in uncovering the mysteries we lost along the way than I am more so in really experiencing older civilizations. That's a personal bias of mine. But I've been encouraging other people. I'm like, if you feel called to it, go for it. I won't get in your way. I'll tell you everything I know about it so you can go be great at it. So let's see. I'm assuming you've done your fair share of kind of studying around. Who've been some of the most influential mystics that you've ever researched? Like, I have a wall behind me of some of my favorites.
So, been most more influential. I'd say, honestly, they've probably been probably the recent ones. There's Mark Parson. There's Therese Davila, which I bought one of her books. There's what's a book called about the one, their Inner Castle, which I actually didn't finish. This one was interesting. I didn't actually finish it, but that was somebody I've really started really liking. Just that was in one of her books. I don't remember, not the Inner Castle. She was talking about kind of this inner prayer, in a sense, where she there was a time where she kind of stopped. Her way of praying kind of changed. I think it started from really from the outside with her mouth and stuff, and it eventually kind of became something more interior. And that was really interesting, because that was something that happened to me around maybe I think in 2020, where I would pray. I would just, usually it was basically not me listening, but just me talking to God. Eventually it was like, after a time, there was something that kind of made me stop talking, and I would just stay there and just stay in the presence. And I would be, oh wait, I need I need to pray. I need to keep talking. So I would start talking again, and then I would just naturally just stop. And then it happened like 4 or 5 times, and eventually I just stopped forcing it. And I just started really, without realizing, practicing the present, and just starting encountering God, feeling God, and just getting this inner peace instead. And this has eventually led me to, started practicing the presence and just getting this more ease into listening, hearing, and letting just God speak in that sense. So yeah, Tejas Davila was an interesting mystic. There's also a Saint Francis of Assisi. I like reading his stories about, I think that was the one time with the wolf that was kind of attacking the village in some sense, and he kind of went to the forest and he brought back the wolf, and he had kind of domesticated him. Yeah. just becoming aware of the out of boundary stuff that's been already done in the past. It's like, okay, it kind of gives you faith for today. And it opens your imagination to what's possible.
Yeah, like Teresa of Avila, I think that was her autobiography, where she talks about those stages of prayer and how it changed throughout those different levels. And that's really, like you were saying, that does happen, where because of how we're taught to pray, especially when you're just starting out and breaking into the spiritual realities, it's like you go in thinking, I'm going to talk so much. And you get maybe 5 minutes in and you're like, there's no grace for me talking right now. And it almost feels like you get muted.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there, and then you zone out, and you're just in the void, and you're like, when am I? When am I? Where? And then you're like, I feel powerful, but I feel rested. I don't even know how I got here. You're like, I hope this doesn't end. And then you start thinking too much, and whoop, oh, I feel regular again.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try this again. Okay, and you go in trying to talk some more. It's like, when am I going to figure out that the talking doesn't matter right now?
No.
Like, even though he's kind of disappointing, the author of Mystical Prayers, he would often talk about how there comes a point in prayer where it's no longer you trying to reach God, it's God has now gotten a hold of you.
Mm.
And there's nothing you could do about it at that point, where prayer, in a certain sense, you can only do those lower 2 to 3 stages out of your own effort. The higher stages are more so a dissolving of you just fading into the ultimate reality itself. And that I can attest to. I think, well, you can too. Where best way I've been able to describe it is you take a cup of water and throw it into the ocean. You can't tell where one stops and the other begins. It's just a fading into, which, funny enough, is the highest stage of prayer. That's really what I liked about Interior Castle, is she's somewhat breaking down what different levels of wisdom looks like as far as this health of the soul. How much light are you allowing to pour through your soul so that it can fill the rest of the temple, that is the body? And in that higher stage, I think it's called transformative union. Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't have the list. There's like 9 different stages. But it's like comparing a clear plane of glass to the sun outside, where it's easy to mistake the soul for the spirit at that point, just because the same heat as you, if we were relating to a window, it's like the heat from the sun is coming through, the light from the sun is coming through unobjected, the window is warm, everything's bright. It's hard to tell, if you don't know what you're looking at, if this is the soul or if this is the spirit, just because it's gotten out of the way. Teresa is fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's see. If we're talking about just your regular everyday practices, what are some of the things that you do that help you engage the supernatural?
Guess first is just finding, like, say, a place where I can just be still. And often I know that when I started practicing seeing the spirit, I was really finding a place where turning the lights off in my room, finding a place that was dark, and just starting fixing the wall in front of me and just looking at the space in between and just waiting. And then I started waiting, sometimes 30 20 minutes, 30, 40, an hour or more. And then I'd start seeing like flashes of images, or just really kind of starting seeing pictures form. And then I'd just write them down. And eventually I just kind of got more used. And there was a point where I got such a clear image that I was like, okay, the Lord is telling me something. But it was like maybe 1 or 2 weeks later that I kind of came across a book with the exact same picture on it. And I was like, oh, I think the Lord is telling me, he wants me to read that book. But it was really, when I engage God, finding a place where there's no distraction, where I can be still. That's, I guess that's my main thing. And, going inside and just starting to tune the outside off. That's when God speaking becomes the clearest. And I guess another thing is, often there was a time in the past where it was also through playing music. Sometimes I haven't picked up my guitar in a while, but when I would just play, and that was something that would help me just step into God's presence. Just playing music and playing a song that I would like, just repeating. Sometimes there was a part of a song, and I just I just get stuck at a certain sentence, and I just repeat it again and again, and it would just put me into that peace, that state where I'd be like, just the presence of God would just overflow me. So that's
That's the former Pentecostal in you.
Yeah.
Play one part of the song over and over again, and then raise the offering right after. Y'all, we got to sew into this one. 50 is the number of Pentecost. Come on. 50 people with $50. Nah, So let's see. So we've talked about sonship, we've talked about heaven. Kind of disclose a little bit your understanding of the kingdom or the empire of God.
Hmm.
Kind of defining it as its own, apart from a religious context, apart from Christianity.
Hmm. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is this idea of, well, the word apostle kind of helps this idea of that the kingdom of God is its own government, or its own way of operating. And when we think about the apostle as the one who, the sent one, it's kind of, I think there was this term to describe it, kind of it was in reference to a boat. I think it was the first boat, or the front of the boat, that was kind of maybe not leading the way, but this idea he's the sent one, the one who comes with the he comes to change the culture of another kingdom. It's this colonization project, in a sense. It's the aspect that we're kind of colonizing Earth to look like heaven, like the way we do things, the way we think, our mindset, the way we talk. And so this is really, I see the kingdom kind of our headquarters, the place where we get our instructions, or where we get taught, and then we come here down to Earth, and then we're supposed to start influencing a culture, in a sense, where we, by example and by teaching, how to function from that culture. And yeah, the idea of God's government. And what else? I guess that's a start.
Yeah, that's a good answer
Yeah,
so
yeah.
far. So, leaning in that same idea of it being a government, let's just say you were given the authority, right? You could remove three things from the world and they would vanish instantaneously. What three things would you remove?
First would be death. What else? I'd say second thing, child trafficking. And what else? What else? There's a part of me that wants to say corruption in the government, or just government altogether. So yeah.
That's a good
So
three because
yeah.
they're the same system. Death, the government, and child trafficking. Well, I mean, in the US it is. I
Yeah.
don't know too much about Canada. So are you actually originally from Canada, or did you move to Canada?
Actually, I was born in France until I was 2 years old, and then when I
Okay.
was 1 year and a half, then I moved here into Canada. Yeah, so I'm in Quebec, actually. So it's the French part of Canada.
Yeah, because I'm like, you have like 6 different accents that you use at the same time. Yeah, that's unrelated to the kingdom. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wait, he mentioned France, but he's in Canada, but his name is African. Okay, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, my parents are from Cameroon.
Okay, I have
Yeah.
some kingdom family out in Cameroon. There's a
Mm.
rabbi out there. I think I had him on already. Yeah, Rabbi Cosmos. He's out in Cameroon. They've been trying to get me to come out there.
Mm.
I don't know what's in Cameroon though, but
Yeah.
Canada too. There's a all of y'all live in the same little strip. Y'all stay
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
close to the U.S. as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
y'all leave the rest of the
To
area to the monsters and Bigfoot and
That's
the
too
werewolves
much
and
ice.
everything else.
The Wendigos, all the weird stuff.
Yeah. All jokes aside, you think it's actually true that there are actual beings or creatures out in that portion of your territory?
Honestly, there's a part of me that's probably like, there's probably some wild stuff out there, but yeah, I know that with there are a lot of stories with Native Americans with Wendigos and stuff like that. So I think there's a portion of that that's definitely true. So yeah, that's probably something interesting that I could start looking into. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I've always been interested in mythology. When I was young, I used to have my little book of all the stories of Icarus, the Trojan War, and stuff like that. All the Greek mythology, and there was always, I think there was a part of me that was like, there's some things, there are things about that are actually true, and
Yeah.
I think when you were mentioning about the Old Testament and how I've always felt that there was always, I think there was more mystic aspect that we don't necessarily hear about. I think at a time we were talking about there was Joseph and him going through portals and stuff like that, and different beings. And I was like, I feel like there's a part of to me that was young, reading about the Chosen War, the gods, all these beings, chimeras and stuff. That was a truth that was resonating in that.
Yeah. Like I could testify to the same thing. As a kid, I remember there was this book series. There was a few different book series, but this particular one, we used to go to the public library. This is back when I lived in Baytown. And they had these massive, like, children's, it was kind of like a pop-up book, but it had other little things in it too.
Mm.
And it was one about mythology. It was like a huge mythology book. And then another one was dragon. Like, so it was like mythology, dragonology. Another one was like wizardology. And then another one was like monsterology. It was these huge workbooks, and just the idea, like, I remember the monster book had like sightings of some of the creatures where it's like a picture of like some grasses, some trees, and it's like, do you see the unicorn? I'm like, I don't see nothing. It looks like a stick in the woods. I don't see it, but that did somewhat instill in me the idea that there's more around than we're used to. There's things happening or that have happened that, let's just say, aren't as common today. And then once I started to reevaluate all those different areas of mythology, because I didn't read comics as a kid, I read mythology. So especially like the Greek stuff was easier to get a hold of. So I've read through Greek mythology, and then eventually some Roman mythology, eventually came down to some of the Egyptians, which is funny. I teach heavily on the Egyptians now. But I was just reading them as you would comic books, because comic books weren't easy to get a hold of back in when I was a kid. It wasn't easy. And then I was poor, so it really wasn't easy. But now on the opposite end of it, it's like I'm an adult. I've let my religion go, but I maintain my spirituality. A fair amount of that stuff actually happened. Did it happen exactly the way they wrote about it in the story? No, they wanted to have a good story. So they hyped a few things up. They added a few characters. It's like, oh no, this can't be a guy that tears a lion in half. This is a lion that's special. This is a lion whose hide can't be pierced, and its teeth it can rip through anything. You got to make it a special lion. Killing a lion barehanded isn't good enough. And there you get your myth of Hercules. Was there someone super strong that killed lions? Yeah, there were a few. Was there this Nemean lion? Probably not. Were there ever creatures, reptilian creatures with multiple heads? Possibly. Did they have the feature where if you cut off a head, another one grows back, and this guy killed thousands of these things? Like, probably not. Maybe, but probably not. But that's been a fascinating aspect of just reevaluating those things with the idea of maybe. Not saying it is, not saying it isn't, but maybe. Because, as wild as I am, I'm still a skeptic.
Just staying open.
Yeah, I'm not super gullible, but I like the idea. I'm like, I won't rule it out. I'm not that committed to skepticism. At some point, it's just hiding. It's like, oh, no. I'm like, well, what did it take for me to believe anything else? Okay, that's the standard I keep across. Does it make sense at all? Yeah. It's like, unicorns can't exist. I'm like, well, considering the animals we got, a horse with a horn is the least of our concerns. Have you really looked at a giraffe? A long neck horse with spots, with horns,
with
a blue tongue. That exists, but at no point were there horses with horns. It's actually rhinos.
Mm.
I found that out
Uh,
because limited vocabulary. Hippopotamus. It's like the name itself just means water horse.
mm,
Say this is a horse in the water. The rhino, it's a horse with a horn.
mm,
They kept it simple.
mm.
So let's see. I asked you about removing some things from the world. If you were able to implement three, let's just say a major change to the world that everyone had to adhere to, what would be number one in the agenda?
A major change, I guess. Reform of probably the education system, a more in a sense. I've been reading a book recently. It's called Unschooling. How children are kind of able to be self-taught in a sense. Be It's this idea of not imposing what they need to learn, but they themselves are extremely curious, and they be kind of, if you just allow them, give them that space, they'll be teaching themselves how to read and do stuff by themselves. So I guess implementing new way of schooling children, that would be definitely one. Another thing to implement, I guess. I haven't thought about that. Probably something. Oh, maybe a lot has to do with teaching, because when you teach somebody that's young, it helps them even after they're getting older. Teach a class on frequencies and just energies, and even hermetic principle, like a course that they would need to go through. Probably, yeah, that would be something.
That's a great answer. Like those are good answers already. It's
Mm,
like imagine if when we were in preschool, they were teaching us about the importance of music and colors,
mm,
uh, crystals and oils.
mm-hmm,
Just something that simple. They're already teaching us, like we as kids, we picked up cool rocks anyway.
mm-hmm,
So teaching us that they're actually important would only increase the rock collection.
mm,
Kids already do that.
yeah.
So I'm like, we'd be better off, like, instead of learning, let's just say, like the Bible stories as we were taught, it was beneficial. But let's just say instead of that, we were taught the 7 Hermetic principles.
Mm,
So now we're a bit more conscious of the energy, staying in balance, uh, all those different other attributes as a foundation. Because pretty much everything you learn before you're 8 is what you keep most of throughout your life. Like that's your
mm-hmm,
foundational period. So I agree with you. If we were able to change what children were being taught during those time periods, funny enough, if we were to flip education and teach the more complex stuff first and then dumb it down afterward, it would probably be more successful.
oh, you think so?
As in start to teach what today would people would consider complex things. I don't care about complex math. We don't use that. I mean, like the advanced sciences, because it's like as a kid, I remember I wanted to know about the planets. I wanted to know about
Mm,
matter. I wanted to understand
true,
animals. That's
true.
what I wanted to know. Nah, what
Mm.
are they teaching me? Pythagorean theorem. I couldn't care
Mhm.
less.
Yeah,
They're
kids will.
teaching me about how to find the slope, and I'm more interested in. So, how did y'all really get the rocket? They like it did it with math. I'm like, no, but like the materials, what elements, how do those work? Teach us chemistry.
Mhm. Yeah, man, kids go wild. They'll just dive deep into the into that hole. Yeah, yeah, no.
Yeah, and then you could spend the rest of their like teach them that when they're kids, at least as much as they can handle,
Mm,
like between the ages of like 4 and 8.
mm,
Give them all that information, and then start teaching them some of the things that aren't as important but should still be known, like
mm.
multiplication. I think a middle schooler can learn multiplication for the first time.
Mm, yeah.
Times
Um,
tables then instead. I've thought about reworking the education system because there's some things that shouldn't be. Some things
nah.
shouldn't be main courses. Some of that should be electives if they exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
You mean we
Yeah,
have to
true.
take calculus for what?
What's the like you said, Pythagorean? No, what is it? Oh, I took advanced math plus I had to sinus, the cos, sin, and all those things. The man, basically a whole lot of stuff that I'm not using today. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's why I struggled with it. I asked the teacher, when am I going to use this? And she said, in college. And I'm like, I'm not going to college. So when am I going to use this in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to need it for your degree. What degree? I don't want one.
After a
At
degree
that
in
moment, I knew I didn't need it. And mentally, I struggled with that. Why am I
mm,
learning something I know I don't need?
yeah, they should teach us about finances instead.
Yeah.
Budgeting that would have helped.
Taught us right into debt.
Yeah. Here's a banking system that's gonna keep you wage slave all your life. Enjoy.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right, Anthony, we're getting ready to wrap up soon. So I wanted to open the floor for you to
mhm.
share whatever you have on your heart for the audience. Pretty much just to leave them with a message. And then after that, I'll give you space to provide the places where they can connect with you, talk about your book a bit. But
Mhm.
what's something you'd like to leave with the audience?
I'd say, I guess I want to share a more hopeful message for the people who are, let's say, maybe a more focused on every outside event, every problem that they see going on in the outside world than they should, just to kind of align themselves with their frame, their blueprint, their destiny, what the kingdom wants them to do. And from there, I know that in my life, when I started doing that, uh, I started seeing relationships that God has brought into my life, which was just these small beginnings where I actually start having more, hope for the future and just hope, trusting that I'd see my place in this whole process of transition that I feel like humanity is just going through. So yeah, just not focusing on how the wars, the problem politics, to the dating scene that looks pretty awful today, and all the different all the different little things that you can.
20v1, you got to get your balloon.
Yeah. So yeah, don't, all the whole all women are this, all men are this, and will I ever find a wife or this? Everything looks just terrible. So yeah, just focus on building with God and turn your attention to Him, and just focus on your purpose and whether it's relationships, wealth, all those things are eventually going to be part of that road that God is going to walk you through. So yeah, just sometimes it's going to require going through the fire and stuff, but it's always worth it. And yeah, also anybody that feels they are in a period of transition where they're kind of, they know God wants them to step into something new, but the future looks kind of hazy. It's unclear still, and you can easily fall back into the old comfortable. I'd say go through the discomfort, go through the fear, because it's always going to be worth it in the end on the other side. Yep. That's it.
That's great. So before I get you to plug your stuff, I want to ask you a question. Now, typically, I don't do this because my show is all about the guest, but you actually took my mentorship course. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate it? Would you recommend it to the rest of the people?
Yeah, I'd say it was 9.5 because it was really good, but I'm still waiting for even better next time. So just
Yeah.
just a motivation. But really, I totally recommend it.
Hey, it rounds up. I got my 10.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I'm working on some stuff for y'all that have already completed it. I'm working on a module 2 for y'all.
Nice. Waiting for it.
How else am I going to get my X-Men? I've been trying to be Professor X my whole life.
Yes. Yeah, that's also one of my goals. I think just I was having a discussion with one of the members who in the course that we took, and then we kind of connected and talked. And as we talked, I kind of got a revelation of like what I wanted, kind of a piece of the future. And like you said, Professor X starting like a school, but to teach mysticism, spirituality, like actually practicing spiritual gifts and learning how to live basically, sons, gods in training on this earth. So
Yeah.
the X-Men. That's definitely a good analogy.
Yeah. So let's see. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? And what's the name of your book and where can they find it?
hmm So first, I think I have my book actually with me. Just a second. Yes. So first, you can find me on YouTube. It's My YouTube channel is From Above, Not Below. You can also find me on Facebook. It's basically my name, Anthony Nitcheu. I also have a Facebook group, From Above, Not Below, same as my YouTube channel that you can get connected as, where I teach about consciousness, frequency, and Sunship. And I also have a book that I published this last June. It's this one. So yeah, Kingdom 101, New Waves, Identity, and Sunship, available on Amazon. And
Awesome.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Please go check out Anthony's book, subscribe to his YouTube channel. Anthony's one of the most important people that's coming out these days. He's not popular or pretty much famous. I'm not even famous, I'm low level. People don't really know me yet.
Yeah.
But he's super important. He's carrying a timely message. He's on track. He's learning how to stay in sync with what the kingdom's doing right now. So if you're a person that's actually trying to stay in sync, I'd highly recommend Anthony.
Yeah. Thanks.
So with that being said, Anthony, thank you for joining me today. It's been great having you on The Inner. Until next time, y'all be blessed.
Ciao.